A heartbroken father discovers a shocking video of his runaway daughter being harmed. Filled with anger and pain, he decides to take matters into his own hands and tracks down everyone involved in the video. Along his journey, he meets Alice, a young hitchhiker who has no idea what he's really up to. As Christian's search for justice turns more violent, the movie explores how far a parent might go for their child, and the dangerous line between revenge and doing what's right. The movie starts with a young girl walking alone on the street. She looks upset and soon breaks down, crying in a corner. The scene then shifts to a white van driving down the road. We see a man named Christian step out of the van and walk toward a house. As soon as the door is opened by a man inside, Christian attacks him without hesitation. He demands to know about some videotapes. Scared, the man tells Christian the tapes are in the cupboard. Christian smashes each one and continues to ask about the others who were involved. The man nervously claims he only built the set and didn't touch the girl, but Christian doesn't believe him. Desperate, the man finally gives Christian the name of Finn, saying he's the one in charge, and even hands over Finn's phone number, revealing him as the main guy behind everything. After getting the information he needs, Christian sprays flammable liquid all over the house. Without hesitation, he sets the house on fire, leaving the man to burn along with it. Afterward, Christian goes to a restaurant to have a meal, trying to appear calm despite what just happened. He orders a steak, but while he waits, a young woman named Alice approaches him and asks for a ride to Rockhampton. At first, Christian refuses, but after a moment, he changes his mind and agrees to take her. As they travel together, Alice and Christian start to bond. Alice shares pieces of her life, and Christian begins to feel protective over her, seeing her as a reminder of his own daughter. He offers her comfort and starts to view her with a sense of fatherly concern, deepening their connection as they continue the journey. The scene shifts, and we see Christian finding a videotape of his daughter getting assaulted by some boys under the influence of drugs. Christian is shocked and upset to see it. Then, he begins going through his daughter's things and gets flashbacks of her childhood. Soon after, Christian stumbles upon an address connected to people involved in making and distributing copies of the disturbing videotapes. Determined to put an end to it, he heads to the location and confronts the manager in charge. Calm but firm, Christian shows the manager a copy of his daughter's tape and demands all the available copies of it. The manager, sensing trouble, admits they have 231 copies of the video. Without hesitation, Christian agrees to buy all of them, determined to erase any trace of the horrific act. But Christian isn't done. He then asks where the video was filmed, and the manager reveals that Finn, the man behind it all, filmed the video at his gym. Christian, growing more intense, pulls out a knife and threatens the manager, demanding Finn's address. Terrified, the manager quickly gives him the information, knowing Christian won't hesitate to hurt him if he refuses. After this, Christian stabs him with a knife and lets him bleed to death. Then, he leaves with the copies and burns them in a fire. The scene shifts back to the van, where Alice is sitting with Christian. While adjusting her seat, she finds an urn tucked beneath it. Surprised and curious, she asks Christian about it. He quietly reveals that the urn holds his daughter's ashes. Alice, visibly upset by the revelation, asks if he plans to scatter the ashes somewhere special. Christian, still burdened by his grief, responds that he hasn't decided yet. The moment deepens the emotional bond between them, as Alice begins to understand the depth of his loss. The scene shifts to Finn's gym, where Christian has tied Finn to a chair. Without hesitation, Christian begins beating him, demanding answers about the videos. Finn, desperate to explain, insists that Jessica came to him willingly because she needed money, but he claims he never drugged her. Christian, filled with rage, counters by reminding him that someone had to call an ambulance for her, and the police found heroin in her system. Christian's anger intensifies as he presses Finn for the names and addresses of the others involved in the video. However, Finn refuses to give up any information. Enraged by his silence, Christian loses control, tapes Finn's mouth shut, and prepares to continue his brutal interrogation. Christian, relentless in his pursuit of information, begins to torture Finn, pushing him to his limits. Faced with Christian's brutality, Finn finally breaks down and decides to reveal everything. He gives Christian the names and phone numbers of everyone involved in the video. Just as Christian is gathering this crucial information, One of Finn's men walks in and is shocked by the scene. Finn, desperate to escape, orders his man to kill Christian. A fierce fight erupts between the two. Despite the odds, Christian taps into his rage and determination. After a tense struggle, he manages to overpower the man and ultimately kills him. After this, he comes back inside the room and slits Finn's throat with his knife. The scene shifts back to the van, where night has fallen, and Christian decides it's best to stay at a hotel for the night. Once inside, he turns on the television and sees news reports about recent murders, likely linked to his actions. Realizing Alice might become suspicious, he quickly shuts off the TV to keep her in the dark. Afterward, Christian tells Alice he needs to take a shower. Before heading in, he casually mentions that he has a meeting with a client in the morning but assures her he'll be back soon. In the morning, Christian arrives at Jim's house, pretending to be a pest control technician. He cleverly inspects the place, looking for an opportunity to strike. Once he gets the chance, he swiftly attacks Jim, knocking him unconscious. Christian then ties Jim to a chair, stripping off his clothes to intimidate him further. As he begins to torture Jim, he demands to know who his daughter left with. Under pressure, Jim reveals that she left with Finn and a cameraman, explaining that Finn was the one who assaulted her. This information fuels Christian's anger even more, pushing him deeper into his quest for vengeance. After hearing this, Christian asks Jim about the whereabouts of his little brother. When Jim denies it, Christian decides to torture him again, but Jim tells him that nobody forced Jessica to do anything, as she came for the shoot herself. As Christian confronts Jim, his wife, Irene, unexpectedly appears. Seeing the tension, she reveals that she knows the location of Jim's brother. Curious and desperate for more information, Christian approaches her and asks if she is the one who sent the video. Irene confirms that she did. She explains that one day the video turned up in the mail, and after watching it, she was horrified. Later, upon seeing pictures of Jessica in the newspaper, she decided to reach out to Christian. With a mix of anger and disdain, she tells Christian that both Jim and his brother are animals who deserve what's coming to them. As they are talking, Jim's brother Eddie arrives in his car and sees Jim in a miserable condition. When Christian returns, Eddie attacks Christian and starts beating him. Their struggle continues for a while until Christian overpowers Eddie and kills him with a hammer. Then he uses the same hammer to kill Jim and leaves. The scene shifts back to Alice and Christian as they wait for Alice's friend to pick her up. After some time, a car pulls up, signaling that it's time for her to go. As Alice prepares to leave, Christian takes a moment to hand her his phone number. He tells her to reach out if she ever needs his help again, showing his protective side. Alice smiles, grateful for his kindness, and they share a brief, warm moment before she gets into the car and drives away. Christian then heads to the location of his next target, Paulie. Upon entering Paulie's house, he quickly begins to beat him just like he did with the others. As the violence escalates, Paulie tries to defend himself, explaining that he left early when things took a dark turn. He claims he initially went there just for some fun, but when he realized what was really happening, he backed out. Determined to get more information, Christian pushes Paulie for details. Under pressure, Paulie reveals that Finn was the one directing everyone during the filming and that he had drugged them all with heroin. He further explains that after the assault, Jessica left with a guy named Derek. Paulie continues to recount the harrowing events, revealing that after they went into a room, Derek forced himself on Jessica. When they eventually emerged, Jessica was no longer in her senses, deeply unsettling Christian and igniting his rage. Furious, Christian demands to know more about Derek, but Paulie claims he doesn't know him. Just as Christian raises his knife, ready to end Paulie's life, Paulie begins to plead for mercy, begging Christian not to kill him for the sake of his family. Hearing this, Christian hesitates. At that moment, he thinks of his own daughter and decides to spare Paulie's life, showing a flicker of compassion amidst his quest for vengeance. After his encounter with Paulie, Christian decides to quit hunting for more of those involved and drives away in his van. As he makes his way home, his phone rings. It's Alice on the line, asking him to come pick her up and take her back. When Christian arrives at the location, he finds Alice waiting for him. She looks relieved to see him, and he tells her to get inside the van. They head to a restaurant to grab a bite to eat, but Christian notices that Alice has been unusually quiet since she got back. Concerned, he gently asks her if everything is okay, and he starts to suspect that she might be pregnant. Alice hesitates but eventually reveals the truth. She explains that she came to see her baby daddy, who had given her some money to help her get rid of the baby and leave town. This revelation adds a layer of complexity to their relationship, and Christian feels a mix of concern and empathy for her situation, wanting to support her in whatever way he can. Christian then asks Alice where she plans to go after this. She shares her fears, saying she can't go back to her parents' house because her father won't accept her, and her mother always follows his lead. Feeling trapped, Alice tells Christian that she plans to stay with a friend for a while instead. Understanding her situation, Christian nods, offering his support. They decide it's time to head back to the city together, both knowing they need to face their challenges but finding comfort in each other's company. As they drive back, Alice brings up the topic of Jessica's ashes, asking Christian if he plans to scatter them soon. Reflecting on her words, Christian realizes it's finally time to let his daughter go. He pulls over to a nearby beach, feeling the weight of his emotions. Once at the water's edge, he sits quietly by the river, holding the urn. With a deep breath, he gently throws Jessica's ashes into the water. Watching them drift away, Christian feels a wave of relief wash over him as if he's finally finding a sense of closure in his heart. The moment is both heartbreaking and healing, marking a significant step in his journey of grief. On their way, Christian receives a text on Finn's mobile. He realizes that it's Derek, and he is calling Finn to meet him. Christian thinks about meeting him at first, but then he decides to let it go. Soon after this, they are pulled over by a police officer. The officer asks for his license and then inquires about Alice. After this, he takes out his gun and asks them to get out. Then, he tells Alice to handcuff Christian and get inside his car. He reveals that Christian is under arrest for the suspected murder of 6 people. Alice is shocked to hear this and asks Christian, who tells her that it's the truth. After some time, the officer takes them to a warehouse, and Christian realizes that something is wrong. Suddenly, some men appear and take them inside. There, he meets Derek and realizes that the officer is working for him. Derek gets mad at him for killing Finn and Eddie as they were very close to each other. During this, the officer takes Alice with him and leaves Christian with Derek and his men. They tie him up to a chair and beat him. Christian then offers them some money in exchange for Alice, but Derek is not convinced. To make matters worse, he explains what he did to Jessica and how he left her to die and dumped her. He also reveals that he made the call for the ambulance as he also felt bad for her. During this, Christian manages to free himself, and a fight breaks out between them. He manages to kill some of the men and goes after Alice, who is with the police officer in the car. He is harassing Alice, but Christian arrives just in time and kills him. As he is helping Alice unlock the handcuffs, Derek arrives and beats Christian. He takes both of them back inside the warehouse and ties them up. Christian wakes up to see Alice in a miserable state, crying in the corner, while he is tied to the chair. Then, Derek comes to him and cuts his belly with his knife. After this, he leaves him with one of his men and takes Alice with him. While leaving, Alice throws the keys to Christian. Meanwhile, Derek's man begins to torture Christian with various tools and beats him up. During this, Christian manages to get hold of the key and free himself. He kills the man and goes after Alice but realizes it's too late. He watches a man leaving in his car after assaulting Alice and goes after him. He quickly makes a strike and stabs him in the neck. Hearing this, Derek comes out, and he is attacked by Christian, breaking his leg. Another fight breaks out between the two, and Christian eventually manages to overpower him and kill him. After this, he goes inside to find Alice in a miserable state, covered in blood and plastic around her body. He goes near her and finds her alive. He takes a sigh of relief and hugs her while crying. This is where the movie ends. If you liked the video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to our channel for more amazing recaps. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications, so you can watch more movies like this. Thanks for watching.